Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Anjuru, and I am from the European Investment Fund. Thanks a lot for being here with us today, connected. We have a great participation, and we are very glad to see so much interest to our pilots. On behalf of the European Commission, the European Investment Fund, and the European Investment Advisory Hub, I would like to welcome you to today's webinar for the showcase of our new financial product, the Skills and Education Guarantee Pilot. So what is this? It's a new financial initiative, debt financial instrument that is dedicated to stimulating access to finance for education, training, and skills development. We have launched this pilot in April, just a few months ago, and it is a pilot already introduced within this programming period of the EU, with a view, of course, to already start supporting the skills and education, this very important sector, but also to help us draw some lessons from this programming period already, so that we can scale up our support and provide more targeted and better support post-2020 with the start of the next programming periods of the EU under InvestEU. So you see now in this slide a little bit the background behind the Skills and Education Guarantee Pilot, why this was introduced, what is it trying to achieve, and what had triggered this launch of the program. So first of all, in whatever we are doing, our aim is to address funding gaps, mainly within the EU. And these funding gaps, in this specific case of the Skills and Education Guarantee Pilots, they were triggered by what is really obvious as a skill gap that exists in Europe. So if we look at the growing and evolving needs of the knowledge economy, these are more and more pointing out to the need of a workforce that is equipped with relevant skills and the right level of education so that they can cope with the increasing demands of the labor market. On the left-hand side of our slide, you can just see as an illustration two big numbers. So we see there that 120 million of Europeans will have to upskill or reskill in the next 5 years. And at the same time, 16 million of jobs will be created by 2025, requiring higher skills. So this is not just a theoretical statement that we want to support here, but the numbers speak from themselves. And at the same time, I think you will all agree with me that COVID-19 crisis had made it more evident that the needs of skills and updated skills are more and more relevant for the support of our European economy and our health in general. So digital skills in particular, they were supporting the business continuation during this crisis, but also we have seen the stretch put and the pressure put on the health industry and the relevant skills that are needed there as well. So with this in mind, we have to face a skills gap, a skills and education gap. And to bridge this gap, we, of course, need the right financing to be made available. And the Skills and Education Guarantee Pilot is one of the measures that the EU has taken to tackle this financing gap. The pilot is supported, is deriving resources from EFSI, the European Fund for Strategic Investments, and it aims to support the EU policy objectives for quality and inclusive education, training, and lifelong learning. And the EIF, the European Investment Fund, has a key role to play there to make sure that this financing gap is bridged. So we are the European institution that is facilitating access to finance for small businesses but also for the support of key policy objectives of the EU, including the one for the support of skills and education. And if we move on to our next slide, we will see that we don't do all this alone. We of course work with several partners that help us reach to the end target of what we want to achieve under each of our facility. In this case, for our skills and education guarantee pilots, you will see on the right-hand side of the slide what is it that we are trying to support, who are the final recipients of this support that is provided under the skills and education guarantee pilot. So with this facility, with this program, we want to support access to finance for students and learners that are citizens or are residing within the EU. And we do that by supporting the students and learners themselves for their personal development and for them to be able to finance their studies. But also we are directing financing to enterprises that are then investing into the upskilling and reskilling of their employees. So here we support professional learners eventually. And the third category of final recipients is organizations supplying education and training. So all the suppliers of education and training. So with this pilot, we don't only support the demand side of education and training, but we support also the supply side, keeping in mind that we want to address not only the financing gap, but also the gap in the skills and education as such. And here on my slide, you will see on the upper part of the slide, our, so to say, more normal way of modus operandi, how we work. We always direct this financing, the money made available by the EU, to our final recipients that I just explained through financial intermediaries. So we operate under an intermediated model. And in the upper side of the slide, you will see our usual suspects, so to say, the financial intermediaries that are normally implementing our guarantee financial instruments, which is the case for the skills and education pilot as well. So there we have banks and financial institutions that the EIF guarantees in order for them to be able to give loans out to these three categories of final recipients that I have just explained. However, in the skills and education pilot, we want to introduce, or more accurately, to enforce an innovation that we have started with the Erasmus Plus student loan guarantee facility, to have as financial intermediaries not only banks and financial institutions, but also the organizations that are supplying education and training. And those organizations, we believe, we are very well placed to serve the financial needs of their own students and learners and help them undertake their studies or training in their own organizations. So the EIF, in that case, we will be again providing a guarantee to those suppliers of education and training, so that for them to provide a deferral of payment scheme to their students and learners. And we will be looking at this part, the lower part of the slide, throughout our webinar today. So if we move on to our next slide, here I want you to keep in mind this code of shapes that we will be using throughout the webinar to explain you what is the deferral of payment scheme, and also how you as an organization supplying education and training can work with us, benefit from the EU guarantee, and support your students and learners. So you will see our logo, the European Investment Fund. Then on the blue rectangle with the pink stripes, this is the sign that we will be using for the guarantee. The blue bubble is basically you, the organizations that are supplying education and training, and they will be implementing the fin deferral schemes. And the pink wheel is the fin deferral schemes sign. And finally, the pink rectangle is your students and your learners. And let us move on to the next slide. So what is it, a fin deferral scheme?
Sorry, Laura, I just stop you 1 second just to address a couple of questions that have come in, because we have received twice the question on whether the presentation will be made available afterwards. So yes, our presentation will be made available on our website. You will be provided with a link. And there was another question on what do we mean with higher skills, so more specialized skills from Robin. So yes, indeed, we mean more specialized skills, but we will go into details on what we cover under the Skills and Education pilot. You will see that the definition of skills, as well as training, as well as educational programs, is actually quite wide. And we plan to indeed make sure that we are able to support the entirety of the EU citizens through their reskilling and or general skilling process throughout their lives. This is the aim of the pilot. So I just give the floor back to you, Laura. I apologize if I interrupted you, but as the question was coming in more than once, I thought like this they would feel more comforted about the fact that they are not going to be left alone after today.
No, sure. Thanks a lot. That's important. Indeed. So the pilot is as you said, relevant for the EU citizens and residents as well as final beneficiaries. So now let us explain briefly what is the fin deferral scheme that we will be explaining today. So this is basically a scheme whereby you as an organization supplying education and training, you will be providing to your students and learners to allow them to have more flexible payment terms for their fees, the tuition fees or other fees that we will see in a minute, in order for them to be able to study even though they may not have the financial resources to do so from day one. So fin deferral scheme can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. It can mean payment of a fee that is due at a certain point in time after the due date of the payment. It can be after the beginning of the studies, at the end of the studies. It can also mean payment of the fees due by installments. So imagine here that you are a university, for example, that you want to launch a new course. So this can be basically one of the motivations behind you wanting to implement a fin deferral scheme. So you are intending to launch a new course, and you know that you need 120 students to break even, to cover your cost base. Nevertheless, you want to offer this course to more students, also for them to have access to the course, even though they may not have the financial resources right now, but also for your institution to create a more financial, like higher financial reward out of this course. So you decide to defer the fees, the tuition fees or other fees to those extra students for a certain amount of time. So this, even if the students don't repay these fees in the end, will not have an impact on your cost covering capacity. And at the same time, for those ones that will start repay, they will be contributing into your marginal earnings, so earnings on top of your costs. And now we can proceed to the next slide. So here, as we've seen before, the blue rectangle with the pink stripes represents the EU guarantee, the guarantee that the Skills and Education Guarantee pilot is providing to stimulate access to finance for skills and education. So how the guarantee works in that specific case, you will see, first of all, it's a portfolio guarantee. So in the case of deferral of payments, what portfolio will mean is the aggregation of total amount of deferral of payments that you have given to your students and learners. The blue part of the rectangle is the amount of the portfolio that stays with you as a risk. So this is not covered by the EU guarantee. We always do that so that we ensure alignment of interest with our financial intermediaries. The part with the pink stripes is a part of the portfolio that is guaranteed by the EU under the Skills and Education Guarantee pilot. And so imagine you have introduced the deferral of payments scheme, and then not all of your students are repaying. So if they don't repay, it means that you will have some losses. And the guarantee is covering part of those losses. As we've seen before, what we do as an intervention within the European Investment Fund is to share the risk with our partners. And the guarantee is the instrument that, in this case, helps us to do that. So what the guarantee covers is up to 80% on a line-by-line basis, meaning that for each student that is not paying back the fees due, the EU guarantee will be covering 80% of this amount that is not repaid. And this is capped, so the overall amount that the guarantee covers is capped to up to 25% of the guaranteed portfolio. And you can see this part in the pink rectangle within the blue one. The important thing is that we are covering and sharing these risks free of charge. There is no guarantee fee that you will need to pay to the EIF for you to benefit from the EU guarantee. And so because of this risk sharing mechanism, you are then able to attract new students or earn more marginal earnings in your courses. So if we move on to the next slide. So who can become a partner? Who can be a financial intermediary in this case and implement a deferral of payments scheme? So as I mentioned before, these can be organizations that are supplying education and training. They can take different forms. They can be universities, vocational education and training providers, business schools, online training providers, even consulting companies that they offer themselves training to external audience, and any other organizations that they do supply education and training. The requirement is for them to be based within a member state of the EU. So this is a pilot that is limited in terms of financial intermediaries within the member states of the EU and supports anyone that is basically residing, is even either citizen or resident of a member state of the EU as final beneficiary, so as student or learner. So these are the two criteria, and of course the last one and important one here is for this organization or institution to be able or willing or capable to operate a fee deferral payment of fees. So this is not a requirement for you to have already operating such a scheme, but you can do that for the first time as long as you indicate that you are able to do that. We will see in the second part of the presentation how. So if we move on to our next slide. So now we will be looking at some of the benefits of you partnering with the EIF and becoming a financial intermediary to implement the Skills and Education Guarantee Pilot with us for the benefit of your students. Maybe we move on. Okay, so some of the benefits we've already seen in our previous little example, but you can also see them all together here. So why would you partner with the EIF, and why would you want to introduce the fee deferral scheme for your students and learners? So some of the obvious benefits are shown here. First of all, you can increase the number of students and learners that you are accepting to your organization, given that the risk is lower, being part of it captured by the EU. So you can offer this to more students without risk, without full risk, to be more accurate. Then the second benefit is for you to reach new and different student profiles, and for you to expand your offer in terms of new courses or new target populations. And this will help you to expand and enrich your student population eventually, but also potentially contribute to the increase of your earnings, marginal earnings, as we saw before. And in the next slide, we see that the beauty of this pilot, the Skills and Education Guarantee Pilot, is that it has a broad scope of coverage. So it can be used widely and based on the needs and the profile of your organization. So it can cover the fee deferral of payments scheme can be given to any student or learner that is above 18 years old, who is participating to an eligible educational program. And it is residing in a member state of the EU, as we said. So this is not only for EU citizens, but for everyone that is undertaking an eligible educational program while staying in a member state of the EU. And what is eligible educational program? It can be anything, and we received a couple of questions upon your registrations asking for specific programs or specific types of studies. So this can cover, because eligible educational programs cover the ISET 3 to 8, vocational education and training, university degrees, PhDs, as you asked us in one of the questions, trainings that are leading to nationally recognized qualifications, trainings from labor market that are developing labor market skills, digital skills, and all these eligible educational programs can be provided either face-to-face or online via e-learnings as well. And in the next slide, so here are the terms, so to say, of the deferral of payments. So what you can give as deferred payments to your students and learners is to defer up to an amount of 30,000 euros per student and learner. And these 30,000 euros can cover several things depending on the way you operate and the fees that you are charging to the students. So the most obvious one is tuition fees, but there in the amount of 30K, you can include also living expenses, other accommodation and transport expenses, expenses for textbooks, and other relevant expenses that you are charging to the students. As long as those are due to your institution, they can be included in the amount that you will defer. So thanks to the EU guarantee of the Skills and Education pilot, the student can only be asked for a personal guarantee. So you cannot ask for a parental guarantee from the student for any deferral of payments that you will provide to them. And then guarantee remains applicable, the coverage of the guarantee remains applicable for 15 years, up to 15 years. And we move on to the next slide. So last thing from my side is another benefit of the deferral of payments scheme, and why it's interesting for you to work with us and implement such a scheme is because it's really flexible. It can be very tailor-made to the needs and the way your institution operates. So it can cover, as we've said, the deferral of tuition fees, but it can include the other costs that we just mentioned before, accommodation and others. And it's you deciding what is to be covered and deferred for your students. At the same time, the features or the terms of the fee deferral scheme that you will be implementing are also decided on your discretion. So you have the freedom to decide what will be the repayment period, when a student will need to start repaying, until when, and also whether you will include in the repayment fees an implied interest rate, and for which amounts, for which courses, and for which students. It's all tailor-made.